if that continues to verify and what that means for us and, well, for all of Florida, actually. So, Steve, we'll let you just go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, this is interesting. It just made landfall on the northern coast of Cuba as a Category 5 hurricane, and it is expected to track right along the north coast of Cuba the next 6 to 12 hours. There's really not much weakening taking place. Well, in fact, it's Category 5 at this point, and it is just a few hundred miles away from South Florida at this point, and it's going to track almost due west through the overnight hours. There's the look at the timeline, a little under 300 miles away from our coast, and there is a look at the landfall spot. I zoomed in few minutes ago because it was obvious that it was making a landfall. Landfall is defined at when the center of the eye crosses land. So it did, the outer, the barrier islands of northern Cuba crossing there, and it is expected to just kind of continue along the coast, hugging the coastline through the overnight hours. Now here's the latest forecast. So we have a hurricane out 160 miles an hour. A Category 5 hurricane once again, and the forecast track paralleling the coast right into Saturday evening, and then that turn back to the coast, and it looks like this track is shifted a little bit to the west. We're now closer to Key West as a Category 4. That is Sunday morning, and then taking the storm. This track is farther west. It's adjusted a little to the west even tonight. There is Sunday at 8 p.m. And here's the other thing. Again, it's delayed in its arrival across Florida. So this position was farther north earlier. So that's 8 p.m. Sunday and very close to Fort Myers, and then through the evening. So our peak weather conditions will be Sunday evening and overnight as the storm moves from Fort Myers up in toward Tampa, and then eventually it moves up into Georgia after that. So it weakens from a Category 4 as it makes landfall on the mainland, travels right up along the west coast of Florida, and by the time it makes it into Georgia, it's a tropical storm after that. What an amazing track for this storm. And here are the computer model tracks tonight. And the Hurricane Center, as I said, has adjusted it a little farther to the west, pretty much right over Fort Myers as a Category 4 hurricane. And that is Sunday evening. That is the 8 p.m. Sunday position. And the model tracks, they're not as tightly clustered as they were earlier, but honestly pretty good for this far out in the storm. Now here's the tropical storm force wind arrival times. So we're looking at overnight Saturday into Sunday. They spread across the area, and the core winds, they arrive on Sunday around 6 p.m. through the overnight hours on Sunday and early Monday. We're picking up some rainfall already on the Treasure Coast, some torrential rains, but the real outer edge of this storm is still off the coast, and it's working now through Andros and also pushing up toward Grand Bahama. That will arrive overnight, and we are looking at some soaking rains coming in, but this is all just kind of enhanced ahead of the storm, and the heaviest is finally starting to settle down just a little bit. We had some really big downpours earlier. All right, let's look at our probabilities of tropical storm force winds along the coastline and back around the lake. 80 to 90 to almost 100%. So those are winds of 39 miles an hour stronger through Sunday and Monday night. This is going to be a Sunday event and Sunday night event for just about everyone. And there's a look at the new numbers for the hurricane force wind probability. 72% now for Fort Myers, and about the same for our area along the coastline and actually back around the lake. These numbers really haven't changed much at all, but that has changed. Fort Myers looking at almost 70 to 80% chance of those strong winds. That's 74 miles an hour or stronger. The storm surge, as the track continues to shift west, these numbers continue to fall. So about 1 to 3 feet is the forecast right now. That may be adjusted a little to the south. Here's our in-house Viper model. And even though it shifts west, I'll remind everyone, Sunday is going to be an interesting day here with heavy rainfall, very strong winds. Hurricane force wind gusts are still possible here, certainly tropical storm force winds, and we are looking in some spots of perhaps over a foot of rain from this. What's going to happen is, because it's spinning counterclockwise, it's going to tap in to the Gulf Stream waters, and Sunday is just massive amounts of rain. This is just one computer model. Actually, this is on the low side, to be honest with you. This model here is showing about 8 to 12 inches of rain through Sunday night. we will probably add to that a little bit. We'll see a foot of rain in spots. So yeah, Sunday is going to be a wild weather day here, even though the storm shifts west. So here's a look at the breakdown for tonight. We have the hurricane warning, torrential rains, and also gusty winds out there too. And as we get into tomorrow, we're looking at the winds picking up even more, and rain squalls, those outer feeder bands coming in, and rough sea conditions along the coastline. And that storm surge begins to peak late Sunday evening and into Sunday night with some of the strongest winds coming in. Here's a look at Saturday night. Tropical storm force winds possible. This is maybe more toward overnight and into early Sunday. We've been watching the delay of everything, and that trend continues. So earlier this was a Sunday afternoon and early evening event. Now it's looking like a Sunday night, overnight, and early Monday for peak winds and peak rain. So that timeline is still changing, but the track is also shifted west a little too, which is important.
And Steve, for many in our community, certainly South Florida, as we think of Miami with loved ones in Cuba, can you go back to that map and talk a little more about the impact? I've traveled there a good bit, and you're looking at, seemed to me, the Camagüey region, Santa Clara,
yes,
Veradero Beach, which has been historically popular the last 10 or 15 years with tourists. I mean, they're taking a big blow there. Can you talk a little bit more there about the impact as it's skirting the coastline there?
Yeah, so that's 160-mile-an-hour winds right now, and that's the landfall. So the center of the storm has just crossed some of those barrier islands, and this is not going to be good because it doesn't move inland and weakens. It just stays as a Category 5 along the north coast right through the overnight hours, and it doesn't get off the coast until tomorrow. So that is their worst case. Our worst case scenario is a Category 5 coming from Miami and paralleling the coast all the way up through Daytona and Jacksonville. This is their worst case scenario, where they have a Category 5, 160-mile-an-hour winds right along the coastline overnight as it heads toward Havana and that area.
The capital city of Havana.
So then, Steve, that does weaken the storm enough to where it looks like you're saying then for the Keys, Category 4, making landfall there. Talk about that difference, that 20 or so mile-an-hour difference makes, and what that likely looks like for the Keys or Key West.
All right, well, let's take a look at the wind speed. So it emerges off the north coast of Cuba. That is Saturday evening. So a little less than 20, a little more than 24, no, a little less than 24 hours from now, and it's 155. So this is almost a Category 5 still. So the forecast is essentially for a Category 5 hurricane for 24 hours along the coast of Cuba. And it comes off the coast. Remember, Category 5 is 157, so we're 2 miles an hour lower than that. And then we head toward, well, now we're talking really lower Keys, around Key West, 150-mile-an-hour winds. So that's Sunday morning. That is 8 in the morning. Remember earlier it looked like the landfall in the Keys would be around 6 in the morning, maybe 5 in the morning. Now it's more like 8. So everything is getting pushed back again by a couple of hours. And then it comes in at 4 with a second landfall. Well, you know, Naples, Fort Myers area, and obviously this is Category 4 and 5 hurricanes. The damage is widespread and it is extensive. And actually, looking at this chart here, look at what else happens. I'm just noticing this for the first time myself. A large area of our viewing area is now out of the cone of this hurricane on the Treasure Coast and Palm Beach County and Broward and Miami. Pretty much, well, even west of 441. I mean, a lot of the area is now out of the cone. Now, that does not mean we're not going to get any kind of weather here. Sunday still looks really, really nasty as far as winds and rain, but that's encouraging too, that we're finally getting out of at least somewhat of the cone. And that's